computer for now. I think we're underway. I am David B. Collins, and I am here with Delilah, last name withheld temporarily, until we can figure out how to get her out from under the thumb of, well, she'll probably be able to tell you a little bit more about that. It's work related, believe me. Delilah has expressed an interest in running for governor of Texas. We can say that until about a year ago, she was something less than a year, I would say, right? You
Mhm.
started this whole thing when?
November.
Just November around election day. Okay. Yeah, you decided that maybe there was a path for you to running for governor. A bit of an unknown quantity, not one of the people who's been hanging around with Texas Greens for 20 years, like yours truly, but we do need fresh ideas and energy. And I embrace the fact that she's here and that she's brought a bunch of really good people along with her. And a lot of that is also thanks to the Green Maps Project, which um, our agent in Poland has been constructing low this past 8 or 9 months, and he just keeps adding to it, and it keeps getting more and more awesome. Well, hello, Delilah. Good thing this isn't going out on the airwaves. I mean, literally tens of people might actually see it and watch me stumble through this. So tell us, first of all, by way of a few personal questions and answers, what is your current occupation? You don't have to say with whom, but what do you do outside of
Well,
being a mom?
I just wanted to tell you thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you offering to interview me and talk about these things. Yes. So current occupation, I am what is called a certified surgical tech, and we work in surgery. We assist the doctors as needed, and I'm an overnight shift worker at a hospital in Austin.
Oh, overnight. It's
Yes.
always that same shift. At least it's something reliable, right? It's not like you'll suddenly have it changed on you.
Right. I mean, I think the profession is meant to be um, not exactly reliable as far as what to expect or anticipate, but yes, the shift is. I've been working on that shift for like 7 years now, so I'm quite how do I want to say this? I'm accustomed to it.
Okay, yeah, if you can get your body and brain accustomed to it, that can be a good thing. I know some people who really can't work any other shift. They're useless during the day, and so the graveyard shift is the way to go for them. Um, and
I think a lot of people who tend to get kind of pigeonholed into that overnight shift are people who don't have like. I have such a busy. I mean, I have 3 kids. Two of them are in junior high, and one's a toddler. So there's not a possibility of me to be not busy during the day as well. So I think it's well suited for mothers, the shift. A lot of the people that I work with on a regular basis are mothers, and it's the best thing for their schedules because you have to kind of be available all the time with kids. So yeah.
and along those lines, we are going to jump right to the question about your identity. Um, Reasons for keeping your full identity hidden, at least for the time being. How would you describe them?
Well, I think just for social media purposes, there's I'm not sure how to navigate what our clauses are that I currently work. And honestly, I have to keep this job because
Mhm.
it's not like we have a lot of funding and for this sort of thing. The Democrats and the Republicans have multiple hired staff for the whole campaigns, and that's not a possibility. But also, I think it's just. I think when people are like, I want to know your identity, it's nice to at least have the illusion that you can control some aspect of your privacy and control like what your presence is to an extent. And so it's really just a bit of me coming to terms with being a public figure and then also just trying to protect the people that I care about by association.
Mhm. Very good. Now, as of December of this year, about 10 months from now, there will be public knowledge that you will have filed to run. So
Yeah,
that's,
it should be public knowledge now because I already filed.
yes. Oh, right.
I filed with the Texas Ethics Commission. So Got a
Right.
treasurer, everything's stamped and dated.
Yeah, you'll if you're running with the Green Party, you'll have to file with the Green Party as well. And at some point, I don't think they've decided yet whether how this is going to work, but they probably got to fix House Bill 2540 from last year so that they have a deadline by which you need to submit either your fee or your signature. And that may be in that December filing deadline. Who knows? It may be, by the time of the party state convention, they could change a lot of things. They could even change the fee structure and make it effective immediately. I'm not looking forward to that. So
I'm
actually,
wondering,
mhm,
I know we're doing a lot of updates to the bylaws and things like that, and I'm trying to stay informed and watch what happens, because obviously it affects not only me, but a lot of people that have been dedicated thus far to the campaign.
your educational background, where'd you go to school?
Well, I went to a technical school, so I have an
Mhm.
associate's degree.
Uh-huh.
Um, the name? Are you looking for the name of the school?
Doesn't have to, doesn't have to
Oh,
be.
well, it's I I think I was $30,000 into debt when I graduated, if that helps.
Holy
Since
mackerel.
everything's run on a financial system. Yeah, I
Mhm.
have an associate's degree and I have yearly certificates and things that I have to keep up with, like basic life support and etc. To and a certification with Texas to hold my job title and work as a, I don't really know what they call us, independent contractor or whatever. Like
Mhm.
it's our little badges. Like we are people, we're numbered.
And,
We're in the system.
there's an awful lot of things that require licenses and certificates. You mentioned you have 3 children.
I do.
And what's the rest of your family configuration? Do you have any pets, for example?
I Yes, I have 2 dogs and 3 cats and a request for a lizard. Haven't gotten to that yet, but yes, I got this really cute. It's a Brittany mix, and she's like a bird dog, and I've had her for 7 years, and I love her, and she's precious. And she has like a little one eye has like eyeliner on it, so I named her Isis. And then it's just been really funny because she's a sweetheart and she like loves children and she's a great dog. And then I have another one, Ella, who is deaf and she's a pit bull mix
Oh.
and she's like a tiny tank. And
Well,
she's the best.
yeah, bird dogs we're okay with. It's sheepdog we worry about. It's like, okay, bad joke about Bernie Sanders, but there's people trying to herd our loyal Greens into the corporate Democratic Party,
Yeah, I
or
mean they
dogs
kind of
trying to do that
push.
for that matter. Hmm.
No, I get that because that's what their function is, though, right? They
Mhm.
push them herd where they're supposed to go.
Woof woof. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Can you point to a moment that radicalized you or progressivized you, convinced you that the major name brand parties were not worth your time?
Um,
Or was it a
I
gradual
think
process?
what's that?
Or was it a gradual process?
Well, it feels like a gradual process. I think it took me a while to figure that it had political backgrounds. I'm a very empathetic person. I think most people who work in healthcare are. And I remember when I was very young and I first started, and I didn't have kids yet, there was a mother who came in and she needed surgery for cancer. And she was so worried about her kids because she didn't have reliable childcare, and she was just like, well, can I leave today to go pick them up and take care of them? And um I don't think so. She couldn't leave that hospital for a while because she got sick, because her cancer had gotten so bad that we didn't actually finish the procedure with any clear margins. And it was really unfortunate because I felt deep pain in my heart for this person. You know what I mean? For the things that she was experiencing and how she didn't have support. And not even from a medical standpoint, I don't think until that moment had I seen somebody that there wasn't something that we could do to help them right then and there. We had run out of options to help her at that point, and her journey was going to be a difficult one. And I didn't know what was going to be the outcome of her. And I just thought, we really don't have a good system to take care of people here. There's a problem. And I think from that moment on, I started to see more and more the problem with healthcare, and the problem with people not having insurance, and the problems with just our general like wellness as a nation. And then politically, I used to be a Democrat. I voted for Obama twice, and I think in the middle of his first term, I started to kind of pick my ears up and interests and things that I've heard, because I've always felt inclined to pay attention and care for the environment in whatever capacity I could. And from the environmental watchdogs and things like that, we were getting a lot of emails and petitions about the policies he was pushing that was, kind of against everything that he said he was for. And I think that kind of woke me up to the inherent lies or conceit involved in the parties.
So he wound up being the cheerleader and saying "drill, baby, drill" himself, just as, uh,
Yeah,
in 2008 with McCain and well, was the Republicans, not necessarily McCain, but I remember that was Sarah Palin. You know,
right.
big part of their, we're going to rescue our oil industry, and okay, so Obama got in, and we may have rescued the oil industry, but we certainly didn't save the Gulf and
No.
Deepwater
Yeah, and
Horizon.
that's where I'm from, actually. I grew up in Port Isabel, South Padre Island, Brownsville, the Valley.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when we had we'd visit relatives in Houston and all the refineries there, and like you just drive through, and Corpus, all the refineries, it just totally ruins the town. And you know these corporations get away with so much damage, and there's no end to it. Seemingly no end in sight, unless there's some serious intervention, of which nobody's willing to dedicate themselves to, which is very frustrating.
Certainly no one in power. Um,
Yeah.
is there a certain, I just added this as sort of a throwaway question, is there a living Democratic or Republican politician you still admire or would like to see successful or go on to bigger and better things?
I do have a lot of respect for Cori Bush. I know she recently was elected. It's been a hard year already, but as an activist, she's been very consistent. So I really do have so much respect for her. Did you say Democratic or Republican?
Yeah, that would be sufficient right there. But that's a good place to start, because it'll be interesting to see whether she follows the same trajectory. I mean, I'm not going to say that AOC is a complete sellout. A lot of people may disagree with that, but she and the squad are trying to stake out this middle ground between their progressive activist roots and the center of the Democratic Party, whatever that is. And it's kind of sad to see, but occasionally they come through with something that makes me remember why I was enthusiastic about them to begin with. And I wonder whether Corey's going to follow that same pattern, or whether there's now going to be a critical mass of progressives in Congress that they can actually be a progressive bloc and consistently progressive, instead of, progressive only when it's convenient. So yeah, I would
Correct.
say I admire
Um,
Corey, and I admire Rashida and AOC and Ilhan Omar to a certain extent. Oh, and Ro Khanna. Yeah, that bunch. And hope that they can remember where they came from, and not have to be on the phone 75% of their time in Congress, like a lot of Congress critters are. And the other throwaway question I had is uh, your top three favorite Twitter follows, whom you follow, and you can also, if there's three interesting or famous people who follow you. Since I got that in
well,
advance, did you think of any?
yes, I actually have two accounts.
Ah,
um, and I try to keep one personal, like, and one public. And from my public profile on Twitter, there's a journalist slash activist called Pat the Burner,
mhm.
who followed me early on when I first started my Delilah for Texas account. And then there's another activist, independent journalist called Rome, and I think he goes by like Unholy Rome at the moment because he's an atheist and he does a lot of community work. So he follows me as well. They're both very supportive. And then the DAOs actually follow my account, and we interact on a regular basis. So
Both DAOs.
that's nice. Hmm.
That'll be interesting to see where they land with, since several people are kind of adrift trying to decide. I mean, I think they've both given up on the Democratic Party, right? And they're talking about becoming active with the Greens, but we're not supposed to say that, are we? At
Well,
least.
they've been public about saying it, so
Mhm.
I don't see where the issue is. And they both followed my other account also, which, and I think the funny thing is, like, I don't feel these are just regular people who are spending their free time on the internet just like the rest of us,
Mhm.
you know. And I think it's nice to see activism take hold of people, and I think it's nice to see I there was a shift in Mr. Dow's public persona with this last election, that a lot of people were like, hey, that's, you know what, I see this going on, I'm supportive of you. And I think that that's just, we need to be patient with people who are coming to terms with where their political standing is and what they want to support. You know, historically we don't have a lot of support from the Greens, from public media
Right.
personalities. So it's nice to see that shift. I don't think I've seen that particularly well any other election. So that's been the only revealing thing this year.
I'm looking forward to a time when people who do have an epiphany like that don't get all sorts of shit from the Twitter community just because they've decided to evolve. That's troublesome when people say, oh, you're not consistent with what you said a year ago, and you say, well, I'm not really the same person with the same ideas as a year ago. So live with it. Now I've decided to call an audible here, and instead of going to the policy questions, I'm going to jump to the campaign questions, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Right. So to get on the ballot, as I think we discussed earlier, HB 2540 stipulates now that even the independent candidates, until this is overturned by a federal lawsuit, knock on wood, will have to either pay the filing fee or submit the petition signatures in lieu of the filing fee. Do you plan to pay the full 3,750, or do you plan to chase down 5,000 signatures from registered voters in Texas?
So I am a person who likes to have a plan A and a plan B. So my goal is to do
Twinkle
both.
that.
What's that?
That's a Green Party twinkle.
Oh, I love it.
Not entirely, but we sort
Yes,
of adopted it. It's more like when you have consensus-based meetings, this is a way of expressing approval without having to actually say anything and interrupt the flow of the speech. If
I
you
love
don't like it, you can do this.
it.
Downward
Thank you.
twinkle.
No, yeah, that's the goal, is to do both. I opened up an account to take funds for and donations. Um, we've got some marketing strategizers, strategists making shirts and things like that. So hopefully I can, COVID permitting,
Mhm.
start doing more public meetings and meet and greets and things like that. I figure the best strategy is to go after both the petitions and the finances behind securing ballot access.
That's great. Get yourself an army of signature gatherers. If you can generate the kind of volunteer enthusiasm required, and make sure you have enough pens so that everybody who signs gets a free souvenir pen. Would be my
Yeah,
recommendation, especially since you don't want to be reusing other people's pens. You have a
that's
website
true.
up. The website. Do you have an address that you can give us?
I do have an address, but it's on my phone that I'm using to do this meeting. So if you don't mind, I'll just email it to you after this is done.
Okay, and that'll definitely be linked in the blog. And you
Yeah,
said
and I'm
you
on
have
Green Maps as well too.
yes, on Green Maps. Okay, good to know. And I'll link to that as well. And you have fundraising set up, you said. If you can
Yes.
send me that page, that would be terrific. Other social media presence. You're on Twitter in duplicate, as I recall you saying. Where else would we find you?
So
Your
we have
governor
a
account,
Facebook.
Facebook.
What's that?
Yeah, your
Yes.
public account, your candidate account.
Yes, we have a Facebook account and we're working on an Instagram account. Unfortunately, it's been hacked already and it's not even I've
Wow.
had to shut it down twice now, and I'm not really sure what's going on with that.
Mm.
But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We have a separate website that another Green Party person is helping us set up, and then Green Maps.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's what we've got so far.
You can get your kids to teach you all about TikTok.
They are, yes, they're getting ready for that. Thank goodness. I'm not ready.
Alrighty, Delilah, time to put your policy hat on.
Okay,
Oh no, don't put the hat on because I'm really digging the purple hair. Um,
great, thanks. I don't have a hat with me.
your invisible policy hat. Got it. Okay. Um, you're in the healthcare business.
Mhm.
Not in business in the healthcare business, but you are part of that system, so to speak. You favor improved Medicare for all. Somebody asks you in an elevator and you got 30 seconds to explain it. What's this about Medicare for all and why do you favor it?
We have a moral obligation to save people's lives. It actually is cost effective, and I don't see why we shouldn't.
All right. If they ask about the cost effectiveness, you can point to other countries, you
Yeah, I'm
know.
gonna hit the stop button on the elevator so we can talk privately for a moment.
This
Um,
obscure country
it's
called
very
Canada where people have
important for
free
us.
healthcare. I mean, perhaps you've heard of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I have heard of it. It's not, we don't, I mean, everybody's got a social security card that I know of. We all participate in social programs
Mhm.
already. There's nothing wrong with socialism or free universal. It's single payer healthcare. That's what we need. That's what's going to help the doctors take care of people. It's going to help the patients take care of themselves and keep up with care. And I can't live with myself knowing we didn't do everything we could to make sure all children and all people that live here are covered medically. It's our moral obligation to save people's lives
Mhm.
and take care of each other. How can we be Texans and say, and have any pride behind that if we don't care about everyone? Everybody, despite their political spectrum, that I've met that's from Texas is a good person. Deep down, they're a good person and they would give somebody the shirt off their back. So why that doesn't translate to policy is a problem with
Mhm.
how our political parties are run and how our legislation gets stagnant and how we can't overcome scare tactics to just address the very real basic needs of taking care of people.
Well, if you give them stuff, they just get lazy, right?
I hate that. I
Yeah,
hate
I do
that
too.
so much.
Yeah.
It's
So
ableist.
let's bring it home just a little bit, though. Since we're talking about improved Medicare for all at a national level, and you're running for governor of Texas and would have nothing really directly to say about it, what could you do as governor of Texas? Or how could you, in lieu of Medicare for all, how could you improve health access and health outcomes here in the Lone Star State?
Well, I mean, obviously, nationally, the goal would be universal health care, but we have to work on what we can. So, from a state perspective, well, there's a couple of ways that we could work on this. And I actually consulted my campaign manager about some of these ideas because she has more legal background. And she recommended some referendums, similar as how we are trying to tackle ranked choice voting. It's like a workaround against the current, you know, holdups in the legislature. So that's one option. I have some notes here actually. I think ideally we would do a tax code that would tax the oil and gas and carbon outputters to help cover the legislation costs associated with changing this. And then if push comes to shove, I think an emergency order to make sure everybody's covered. That should have been done already last year because of the pandemic. And they tried to use different ways to address the needs without actually just committing to universal health care, which is a long-term goal that or strategy that would have helped mitigate the disaster that was and is COVID.
Mhm. Have you looked
So
into
those are the few options.
you looked into the option of expanding Medicaid, which is something that Republican administrations have refused to do for who knows how long, because they've had a streak going back to 1994, right?
Right.
So Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing because, the Affordable Care Act is not all that affordable to start with, but if it's not covering millions of Texans, what good is it?
Hmm.
I think if I
I
were in a position, I'd say like in the first 30 days, I'd look for a way to get Medicaid expanded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the status of being able to write emergency orders, I know that this last year, Greg Abbott was getting a lot of heat for people said he was abusing his emergency order status. And
Mhm.
I don't think they got anywhere with limiting that. So that sounds like a little if this doesn't work, if this doesn't work, this is what we have to do. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, it is a public health crisis. It's not, it isn't something that's going to go away anytime soon. So,
So there are many different aspects to the healthcare crisis as we know it. What do you consider the worst individual problem that Texas faces? And if there's a tie for more than one, what are they? What's the most appalling fact or statistic, for example, that you've seen?
well, because of COVID and because of the complete um, polarization of party politics, we have suffered a break of moral obligation by people concerning public health, and that has been the most infuriating thing to me and many other healthcare providers is that it doesn't take any extra effort or work or suffering for you to just do the simple thing of wear a mask and not congregate in public indoors. And people cannot seem to wrap their heads around it. So it's very frustrating. I actually didn't speak to my father for 3 months because he went to an anti-mask rally, and I was like, I cannot speak to you because I don't have respect for you right now. And until you, you know what I mean, I cannot. And that's just been the really painful thing to see because it's like, wouldn't you open the door for someone? Wouldn't you, help somebody start their car? Why won't you put a mask on? So that's just that hurts because it did affect the numbers and people actually died because of that.
The number of deaths in Texas, you're right, as a current issue, it probably dwarfs everything else as far as the swiftness with which that body count seems to keep climbing. Um, uh, though there's certainly plenty of others that seem to be dwarfing it in recent months anyway. Moving from health to energy and transportation and related issues, I don't think it needs to be said that Texas is a world capital, Houston in particular, of fossil fuel extraction, refining, and exporting. And if you're putting on your utopia hat now, how do you envision the transition into a clean energy future here for this state?
I envision taxing the hell out of them until they invest in renewable energy and using that money to fund our programs. I envision mass funding in education. What are we? I'm sorry, education. And then what basically what we need is a lot of like smart models. So every time that there's a renewable energy
Breakthrough?
movement or
Mhm.
business model that is trying to take away in Texas, it seems to be undermined by the fossil fuel industry. So I think we just need to have expansion and funding
Mhm.
for multiple types of renewable energies. We still don't have all of the data to suggest, which one's better. So we should invest in all other renewable resources at the moment.
Mhm. Yeah, I look forward to Houston being the worldwide leader in re- renewables. And, I mean, it just makes sense to me. And I was even thinking that like 20, 25 years ago when I was having to march into the Exxon building to help train Exxon employees on the new computer systems they had. Um,
Oof.
so that also folds in the question I was going to follow that with, but what can the state government or should it do to facilitate that transition? As far as taxing goes, though, the follow-up question that came to mind was, couldn't they just pull a Halliburton and pull up stakes and not be Texas companies anymore? Or Would they no longer be able to do business in Texas or just decide they couldn't because the taxes aren't worth it?
Yeah, I'm gonna play hardball with these people. They've exploited our state's resources and people for decades. I'm tired of it. I'm not trying to make friends with them.
Mm, all right.
Texas is so I don't know if you've heard, but I tell people, and one of my catchphrases I'm going to run with is why secede when we can lead? Because Texas could be independent. We have that spirit behind us. We just need to focus our energy on making sure that we're doing right by all of us. And we keep putting these corporations first before hard workers and families, middle class people, lower income. That's ridiculous.
Mhm.
This does not speak to our ethics as a state, you know?
Right. Too much social Darwinism. Just let people scrap for what uh, scramble for whatever scraps they can get hold of.
Pull
Um,
yourselves up by your bootstraps. Like, okay, I can't fish where the bay's polluted. You know what I mean? My
right.
kid's sick because of pollution. These are I grew up in Galena Park. So we moved all over when I was little, and I remember I started getting migraines when I was in my teens, and my dad always said like, "It's because we lived by that refinery. That must have been it." And like he, even though he would probably consider himself a conservative, like voting and things like that, he made that connection. He made that mental connection that
Good for him.
that's a good thing for somebody to have to be exposed to on a regular basis, and it isn't.
Place hasn't gotten a lot better, but Air Alliance Houston is helping going into the schools and telling them how they can monitor their ozone in the immediate area, which that's been going on for quite a while. I wish something would come out of that. Um, Moving on to, oh yeah, environment and health as intersectional issues. I'm thinking about Jill Stein, who became active and had her epiphany when she realized that a lot of the illnesses she was treating were environmental in their origins. So in your personal and professional life, do you have a story or an anecdote about examples where environment and health intersect? I mean, you talk about Galena Park just now and the conditions you suffered there. What I mean, in the course of your professional life, however, what could you point to?
Right. I mean, Austin is fairly clean by urban standards. But that's not to say that, with the Kinder Morgan pipeline that they blew through, there's been some very serious, so people don't talk about mental health care enough. There's still a stigma regarding mental health. And from my experience on a personal level with people who lived in the hill country and made their lives around their water wells and things like that, the long-term effects of being harmed environmentally, I mean, I think that there's a correlation between mental health and physical health. If you're depressed or you're sick or you're anxious, that can have consequences for your general health and well-being. So that's a very obvious thing that I saw recently. And I know back in the valley growing up there, every time there is a spill, um, it affects the entire economy in a way that I haven't been able to find research or data to suggest, but they seem to get sick more because they still rely on the water and they still rely on the food sources that come from there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I would expect to find some serious GI disorders or things related to people who are eating things from polluted areas, but I haven't been able to find the research about that, and I'm sure there's reasons why.
Well, you got plenty of time to do that. But that is interesting that you bring up the mental health because it's that we keep learning more about mental health and brain science and so forth. And there are environmental factors that contribute to it, and not just talking about pollution or traffic, for example, but things around you and the way society is constructed that lead to depression and suicidal ideation and anxiety
Yeah.
disorders and so forth. We could talk about that all day, but I'd rather not. Um, Flooding, major issue here. Have you seen any ideas that you like regarding flood abatement as to what could be done or what could stop being done? Um,
I
we've
do
heard.
have I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'll try and keep it quick though. Most of the times when there are issues with flooding, it's because of poor construction
Mhm.
around the areas. So for instance, Houston or San Marcos, their new construction directly affected the outcome of a flood season and disproportionately affected the people that had already been there long term. So our floodplains are ever increasing, and yet company oversight is not getting any better. So I think there's an issue there that needs to be addressed. But yeah, I think if they just zone things to consider long-term effects, not just in the one area that they're building, but I mean, for 20-30 mile radius, they should have to consider what the impact, the economic and environmental impact would be from their construction, because
And
that directs the water. We don't have enough places for the water to get. I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was going to tell the truth about it because environmental impact statements can be loaded with lies.
That
Believable
is
lies, of course.
Well, I mean, that goes also with public education too. I mean, we need to have more advocacy groups and more people involved with like talking to people about things that are affecting them that they may or may not be aware of. A lot of people don't pay attention to what's happening in their neck of the woods, and I think I'd like to change that so people can pay attention better.
I found it amazing. I'm pretty sure a lot of the world knows that that the Texas coast floods, but they probably hasn't been as much noise made in global media or national media about central Texas flooding just within the past 10 years. That's been horrible. Just and same thing is happening in Europe. Highlands, places you would not expect the rivers to completely swell out of their banks and flood every town in sight. You know, in the hill country of Texas, for crying out loud. But let's move on. Just got about 10 minutes before we wrap this one up. I'm going to go to education, and these will be quick fire questions. I'm going to sort of skip that long philosophical question that I had sent you earlier, but this is courtesy of my wife, who, like me, is a former teacher. Do you have any ideas about how you might change the funding formula for school districts, especially in light of what's been happening with COVID? And they're talking about how students have been just completely disappearing off the registration rolls for districts, and the districts will be left holding the bag because the state won't be able to send them as much money as they're accustomed to having. What would you do to change that, or do you have any particular ideas?
So I do think that education should be cost free from kindergarten to at least cover some community college. And I think that as far as like, um, you know, the districts take money, you pay your tax bracket and the schools that are near where you live. And I think that that disproportionately affects people worse and better depending on where they live. And so I'd like to make that a more publicly funded means of distribution so that there aren't people who can't feed their children, um that their only meal is coming from school, like that all districts have a good amount of resources for the children. I think it's kind of weird that the taxes that you pay only affect right where you live. I mean, that doesn't seem well, it doesn't seem to have been working out well so far.
It's going to take a lot of work changing that completely from local and district level, just keeping things within the district to making it more statewide. I mean, they've tried that, and various things have floated and some have failed, but it's a really complicated issue. I do know that. Now the rapid fire, what standardized tests, keep them or trash them?
I think they're garbage.
Get rid of them. Okay. Student loan forgiveness. You talked about community college, possibly all state college tuition free. What if they have that $100,000 worth of loans? Just
I
write it
mean,
off?
aren't they gonna pay more than that over their course of their careers back in taxes? I
Well,
mean, I know we don't, they're an asset.
mhm.
People who go to school are assets to us. We need to treat them as such.
I agree. Of course, I was just thinking about Jill Stein again because that wasn't the thing that she brought and thought would be the big winning issue in 2016. Just talk to young people and say your college could be free and your loans could be forgiven. And I don't know how much power we'd have at the state level for that, but I would kind of like to see it. I think personally, and I know this is your show, um, that we could arrange something so that everything up through state college tuition could be free, and we could make it so that the formula is more equitable. And yeah, taxing the oil companies probably is a good place to start. Uh, on transportation, high-speed rail connecting the four biggest cities in the state, yes or no?
I'm going to say yes because it seems like it's already in the bag. But I will say that I'm very concerned for people's private property rights being infringed upon and potential pollution or other resource damage from them. We just don't, we haven't seen it yet. I don't know how it's going to be. I have some concerns, but I think ideally it would help the state as far as making more money,
Once they can
job
get
markets, etc.
if they can get
Sorry.
those problems resolved, I'm in favor also, just in principle. It's just that, yeah, and it would probably cut down on the amount of overall emissions because, considering trains versus planes, huge
Yeah.
difference as far as what they emit per mile traveled. What other state level policy matters that we haven't discussed do you consider high priority? What's on your top 10 list?
Hmm. Well, I think it would be nice to see a universal basic income model brought to Texas as well.
Hmm.
It feels like, and from what I've heard from people who have had to go through the system of disability and things like that, it's basically a poverty sentence. And that makes me feel a bit ashamed. That if you get sick and you can't work, that you're basically poor for the rest of your life
Mhm.
and have a lower quality of life. So I'd like to see some sort of UBI
As a
enacted in
long-term future.
Texas.
It seems like a state could, unlike with Medicare for all, which really requires a huge risk pool to work correctly. For example, they tried it in Vermont and they realized that the UBI is something you could probably try on a city, county, or state level. And I think they have, right? I think I've seen some studies where they said, okay, we're going to give everybody um, $2,000 a month for nothing and see how it works. Have you?
Yeah, I don't have an article in front of me. I know I read about um, national universal healthcare in Tokyo, and I read something about UBI in South Korea and how it affected the economy and how it ended up being a better thing for everybody.
I may be
It's
wrong,
like
but I think I
pretty
remember
much the same amount of
Stockton,
life.
California, wasn't it? Stockton, California that had a pilot program for that. Maybe I'm just
I don't know. I'll have to look into
talking
that.
out the side of my neck here.
Any research
That's
you
maybe I
have?
dreamed it. Who knows? All right, Delilah, we want to thank you for this hour of wonderfulness, and we wish you the best of everything on the campaign. And I will definitely be seeing you on Twitter. And I don't know when I'll have this posted for the blog, but probably come Monday. I might be able to even do some editing so it looks a little bit slicker. But
Cool.
thank you once again for your time. I'm going to go make dinner and let you get back to work and family life and stuff. And
Thank you, David. It was good to talk to you.
good to meet you. Take care.
You too. Stay warm.